Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're continuing the Husqvarna WR 250 build. This was a build that the subscriber sent in and said that their engine had seized. So we pulled it apart, we explored it, and we found that the crankshaft had seized up due to it just getting too hot. And where we left off was that we sent the parts into a workshop to get the crankshaft replaced with all the bearings and pins. And we also got the top end done while we were there and swapped out the bearings. So this episode will be a continuation of that build and more of an in-depth build on this engine. I'm going to go step by step, show you how to put it together, and yeah, without further ado, we'll get cracking. One thing I will say is at the end there is a surprise. I've time-stamped it, so check that out at the end. I'd really love it. And throughout this build, the whole video is time-stamped at any given point. So if you want to see just the clutch installation, it's there. If you want to see the power valve, top end, bottom end, just hover over the timeline and you'll see all the segments. Enjoy. So just before we start, we're going to just check the calibration of everything. So we're going to do the fork sliding end thickness, 3.94, which is within tolerance. It's supposed to be, I'll put it on the screen, you'll see where it is. Yeah, so that one's fine. And this is really important to check because if not, it might slip in and out of gears. Tolerance. Intolerance. I wouldn't imagine these would be under. Like there was that one that had a 3.92, but I doubt that. It came factory 3.94 and then it's gone lower. The other things we have to check for is the pin driving diameter. So this one here. This one should be between 5.9 and 6. Yeah, 5.97. And again, I'm taking this with a slight grain of salt just because this caliper might not be 100% correct. But yeah, 5.92, 5.98, so all within tolerance. And then we've got the grooves. So these grooves should be, I'll put on the screen, I can't get my caliper in there. I mean, the one that I could get in, the one that I could get in correctly, I was getting 429. And I can't get into these ones to read it accurately, but if we see here, there's absolutely no signs of any damage. They look really good. So as I was saying, this looks fine. So again, I'm taking an assumption based off that one that they're within tolerance. So take that with a grain of salt, but if you can measure it, I'll put the specs on the screen. But this is the order I'm going to do. I've got this washer for the end here of the transmission. And then from here, we're going to go the bearing. I'll have to heat it up so it goes on properly. And we'll close it off with the washer of the bearing. And I'll put something on the screen. No, there it is. See there. So that bearing needs this in the middle and then this washer on the outside. Then we're going to put an O-ring and we're going to slip the O-ring into this little groove here. And that'll be like the transmission drive shaft transmission. For the other one, just put that washer on the top. Then we're going to put the gear selector in and this will be on the other end of the case. And then for this, I'm going to just make sure I put this on. And I'm going to put that in the left-hand side of the crankcase, slide it through, because then we can put on all those components, while these components are put in through the right-hand side of the crankcase. So the only thing I need to remember when I'm putting it together is to make sure that that's on when I put it through the left crankcase. But you guys will see that in a sec. I just want to show you the prep. Very hot, very hot. What I will do is just oil up while it's defrosting. So this is what I meant by the Kickstarter. I'm going to do that first. I'm going to have this washer on and I'm going to feed it through underneath. Just like that. That little hole there, I'm going to put that in So that's what I'm trying to do. And then you can slide on the plastic afterwards. One day I'm going to get a better camera so I can zoom in on this kind of stuff. Pretty sure that's just going to go into one of these holes here. So we'll do that. We'll align that spring in a second. Before you go too far, don't forget to put these in, because you'd hate to put it together and then forget about that. Okay, next up, transmission. Transmission on the left side. Chuck that in. Chuck this one here. So again, when you do that, you only want light taps because you don't want to blow through that bearing. Now, this part. 2 on the left, 1 on the right. This is going to be a nightmare to do on camera, so I'm just going to do it off camera, but it's going to oil a lot of this up. That's where the selectors are. Spinning freely, which is good. So just before we put it all on, I'm going to put this in here. And oil. You know, these have all been oiled up. They've been lock threaded. So we should be good to put the covers on. One thing I always check, because I've run into this so many times, and this has been the easiest build I've had so far, it doesn't spin smoothly and it doesn't go through all the gears. Don't put the case on. For the Kickstarter, for the crank specs, I'm not going to measure it just because I got a shop to do it, but there's no up and down play now, and I'm assuming that the crankshaft is balanced, but I'll put the metrics on the screen so you can see it. There's a little bit of side to side, but very little, probably within spec, but again, I'm not going to check that part because I got it done by a shop. And that's what we wanted. So because I'm starting to turn it, it's going to pull out and then it's going to start attaching to all the gears and turn the mechanism. So the fact that that popped out is good. And also when you put it back in, I found here when it's loose, you need to like preload it a little bit. Get this lip as close as you can to here. So then when you twist it, it springs back straight away. So then the gear, like the Kickstarter, isn't slacked or anything like that. So just put a little bit of load into it before you put it behind. So the reason that pushing out works is because it's going to push out and push against this gear. So we're going to put this bearing in here, throw that over it. So there's a little lip there. So you're going to put that slot in that lip. Chuck the clip over. Great. So now, if I turn this, it pushes out. For the gear underneath, shim, a bearing. I don't know if I'm calling this the idling or starter gear, but gear. Another shim, and then chuck at the clip. So we've done this right. We should turn this. They both move, and the gear stick comes back. So for the main gear, we'll do that first before we go to the gear selector. Still got to put the bearing gasket. I don't even know what it's called. The woodruff key in. So we'll torque this once we have everything together. So I usually like to torque the drive gear, the clutch, and the magneto once the whole bike is together, just because we can hold it in certain spots. Because if I try and torque it now, I've got nothing to hold it with here or on the other side. Alrighty, so let's get the gear selector ready. This little divot, I'm going to line it up with that pin. Should just click in when I get it. Yeah, just like that. So you can hear it there every time I spin it. It changes gear. This one is in next. I don't actually know what the torque spec is for this, but judging off other bikes, it's always been around the 14 foot-pounds, 14 Newton meters. But I think I'll just I'll put it in, and then, yeah, it's an Allen key, so we can twist it up later. I might put some lock thread on it, because I really don't know what the torque specs are. I cannot find it in the manual for the life of me. The way that this works, so this is how you want to line it up, that they're pushing in and out, and what this is exactly is one of these little ball bearing, at a lack of a better word, with a spring. You throw it in the hole, you line up that little lip there to the top of the bearing, and they should press out against your finger. So I'm going to put this face down and have this little, I have no idea what to call that, but this goes over this bit, and what that is, that's going to sit here with the gear selector. So when we move up or down, that'll change the gears, because these will get locked up in here. And yeah, as you can see, because they stick out, they lock against the, see if we can get closer. They lock against the grooves, so if I push down, it's going to push against that groove, and vice versa. If I push up, that bottom one pushes against the groove, which rotates it this way. If you push down, that pushes it that way. And that's what the gear selector is going to do. It's going to push it up or down. That's how the gear selecting works. And you would have saw earlier in the video, putting the transmission in, what the gear drum looks like. And that's going to bring the forks forward or backwards and move the gears accordingly. So these are always tricky to put in, but the bottom end of the spring wants to push against there. And you want this kind of to sit down here. So then that's going to pull it up against the gear. But I just want to show you up close how that's going to work, because I'm going to have to fiddle with it off camera to actually make it fit, because right now I can't just put that in because it needs to sit down here. Okay, so I did this off camera. I put that nut in. I've got this resting against the back of the gear selector, and as you can see, that little that coil is stopped by that little part of the engine. The coil there, sorry, I can't get zoom in because the GoPro is stuck against this casing part. So now when this pushes down or up, this spring will bring it back underneath the gear selector, and that's what holds it into gear. So it's only when we shift the gear up or down, I can't do it now because there's tension on the spring, that's the only time it's going to move. Cool, so you want movement, it's good to go up and down. And yeah, while it's clamped, it's good that it has movement. That's the main thing you want to see. So let's chuck this in. All right, the clutch. So we've got a washer, 2 bearings which sit inside the basket. You've got a spacer. Then we'll chuck in the inner basket. And then you have, not really sure what to call that, but another washer that will clamp off. Nut. Put this rod in. That's going to sit against there. And then you'll have the screws with the springs. So we're going to put the basket in first, then we'll measure up the plates to make sure they're within spec. And that's what we'll be doing with the clutch. But that's just the overview of what you'll need. So first things first, washer. Then get the basket. Put these 2 bearings in it. Chuck that on. You might need to just twist so it locks in with the right gear. I'm going to chuck the spacer on. Then the inner basket. No, sorry, it's not washer, then this funky washer. It's just this one, because this goes on the end of here. So, chuck this one in here. Start doing the screw. Now while that's here and we don't have the clutch plates in, I'm actually going to torque it up, because we can hold the engine here and here. 51 Newton meters and 29 Newton meters. The clutch one's a little lower than I'd expect. Usually it's in the 30-40s or maybe 10 below the primary nut. So just before we put the clutch plates in, let's do the power valve assembly. So these are the components. So I'm going to start here. This. That's going to sit there, come together like that. Chuck this on. Do that now. So now comes the tricky part, is I'm going to have to put all 4 ball bearings in here and somehow compress that to that little opening there in the rod. I need to put this inside of that hole in the shaft. So these 2, one on the left of the power valve and one on the right of the clutch. So to put this on, I need that in that groove. Put it in there first, and then I'll put it against the case. Put a new O-ring on the water pump cover and then chuck it on. So now we're going to check the clutch specs. Put it on the screen as usual. Standard is 3mm, minimum is 2.9. We're at 2.96, 2.97. We'll be okay. Second one is the clearance. Yeah. So that has to be a maximum of 0.7mm. And that doesn't fit at all. So I know that this is 0.7. If that doesn't fit, it's going to be less than 0.7. But what I'm doing is measuring the gap between the basket and the clutch plate. So now that we know that they're all in spec, I'm going to load them one by one. And before I chuck them in, I'm just going to give each row just a light oil, throw it in, put it in, repeat. So we'll do that now. Great. So now that's done, let's chuck the rod in. Make sure that washes on top. And we'll put this on. There doesn't seem to be any markings on any one of these, so I'm assuming I should be able to put it on anywhere. Okay, before we do that, we need to get the spring heights. So these should be standard 47mm. Minimum threshold is 43. .44. .43.7. So yeah, it looks like they may need a replacement later coming up, but still, so far that the smallest one is still above the minimum, and majority of them are in that 44, 45, so we're okay. And then the torque spec to this is 7 Newton meters. So I replaced the O-ring on here. Now let's chuck it in. So we're going to chuck this on, and this part here, there's a line. I'm hoping that focuses there. And I'm going to get that line to line up with that line there. So I believe that that is the timing mark, at least for this section of it. So it should sit roughly around there. Chuck that there. So I've actually lost the woodruff key. The woodruff key would sit in there, and then you can see that little groove down at the bottom there. Slide it on like that, and you put this nut and the magneto nut and torque it up to, I'll put it on the screen, and yeah, that's how you put the magneto on. But because I've lost the woodruff key, I'm going to have to just get one in before I complete this completely. But it's as easy as that. Put this on, put your nut, put your bolt, torque it to the spec on the screen, And then just for the remainder of the video, we'll chuck this on. All right, last stage of the build, the top end. So what we're going to do, we have a new Pro X piston kit. I'm going to rebuild the power valve and then just put everything back together. We'll get this going. We've also got the bore has been honed, so that's nice and fresh. And so has the top of the head. It's been completely cleaned and machined. So here's hoping this will be a quick put together, but we're going to put the power valve together, bolt that on, and then we'll put the piston in, and then just all the little parts around that once the cylinder's on the bottom end. All right, let's chuck this together. So on this side, bearing. On this piece, you want that dot facing outwards. So it would go there. Then you want this little flat part to sit out like that. Small screw through the top. A larger screw in the middle. Like that. Then we'll tighten it up, but that's that side. And that's fine to move around because that's just going to sit in the holder there. The other side will start. Bearing. This needs to stick out. We want them facing in the same direction. So you can see that the teeth are pointing that direction. You wouldn't want it like that, because what they got to do is rub up on these gears there and there. So they need to be facing the direction of the valve. That, we'll place it on top like that. That'll go there. We just want to open up this. Yeah, what you want from here is this tab to sit in between that spring there. So I'm holding this with one hand together, otherwise it will spring out. So you want to place that inside of it, just like that. So I'm just going to put the screw in because there's a lot of tension there. I'll show you how it is. That's how you do it. So you can see that they're locked in there, so when that moves, has that potential to flick it back. And that's how you build the power valve from scratch. So this side needs to be on, would that be the left side of the engine? For this to work, you want the bearings to line up. So this is on the right side. Chuck this here. This and this. And what I think this bracket does, I think it serves two functions. With this up, well, firstly, the back bracket stops this gear from coming out. But then there's also this part here, which I would say stops this from going too high. So I'd say that would be its two functions. And then on the right side, I've got the exact same bracket here. And again, it sits in like that because it holds that gear in. See on that gear? Yeah, here. Sorry, I can't really zoom in on GoPro. There's a dot there and there's a dot there. I'm assuming they need to line up. And let's check this second side. This one's a bit dirty. Yeah, there's a dot and a dot. So what we're going to do is now rotate these, that they're going to line up. So once I push that in, those two dots will line up. And on the other side, put that there for a sec. Yep. That's there. And then do this like that. So you can see those dots are now lined up. So now we'll put the back of the case on and line this up properly and put it together. Before we put that in, just a reminder to put these in here in the bottom ones. So we're just going to slap the piston together. One thing to note, the letters always face up. So that's got a T there, so that'll face up. And that's got a T there. Now these are identical, so it doesn't matter which one's top or bottom, but just check your piston specs if there is a difference between them before you put them on. But in this case, because they're identical, it's fine to put them on. And interestingly, that this piston is the original one, which is one ring. So the guy said that should give it greater durability over time. The owner's not racing the bike, so maybe the one ring will provide extra power, but this will work for what he needs. So we'll slap this together and then we'll chuck it into the engine. So I've got the circlip on that side. This piston has in, so that means intake. So let's see if we can just put it on now. I will oil this up a little bit, just the con rod. And then, while I put the second clip in, because it is fiddly, I don't want the clip to drop in there. So I'm just going to cover this off, just in case this drops when I put it in. So I'll do this off camera and then we'll chuck the barrel on. Okay. Now the clips are in. Just going to make sure that the rings are lined up where they need to be. Just put a bit of oil on it. I'm going to chuck it on the barrel. I'd rather have a little more than less oil, because at the end of the day it will just blow some smoke when that oil gets burnt. It won't be a bad thing, and it will probably just mean a little bit extra lubrication at this point. So it's the insertion process. The barrel's on. Next thing is the base nuts. I'll put the specs on the screen. We'll hook up the power valve, put in the intake, slap on the head, put the covers, then we're done. The last part of the power valve assembly. Yes. So chuck this on first. We need to line this up. And there is a, I'll show you. It's almost like a half moon hole. As you can see, it's not a circle, So it will sit only on here in a particular way. Just have to keep twisting it till you find it like that. Chuck this on. So it is good to see that when you tighten it, everything moves and comes back. So the fact that it all comes back under, that means that we've done it correctly. I'm going to chuck this on. So it'll work now. So as mentioned at the start of the video, there is a surprise. And it's this. If you've been following the channel since the start, you might recognize this, but this was the first build that I did. KLR 250, 1985. To be honest, doesn't work all that well. But it was the first engine I was working on for years, so I'm actually not too surprised. But doing this really showed how far the builds have come in a year and how much I've learned. So the next episode, just while we're waiting for some parts for the RMX. So right now you can see the tank stripped, various parts everywhere, the frame's been painted, the engine's behind those cloths there so it doesn't get dirty, and the plastics, they're all here. Just waiting for all the parts to arrive, but as a filler, I'm gonna fix this. Hopefully make it look as nice as this one did, as clean anyway. But it's really just a reflection for me how much I've learned, and it's actually been a lot of fun doing this, and now people are joining the channel, so stick around for that one. It's a 2-part series, step-by-step teardown, piece by piece, following the service manual, and then a rebuild piece by piece. And we'll paint it properly, because first video we used a Dulux series, which as soon as you put oil or fuel on it, it peels off, whereas the VHT paint doesn't. But again, it's all been learning, and I'm very excited to jump back into that one. But I do appreciate everyone that's subscribed, everyone that leaves comments, likes. It's actually been super motivating to get to this point, and I'm only at 300 subs, so it's nothing special, but yeah, let's hope we can just keep rebuilding. And if you're in Sydney or New South Wales, Australia, and you have a broken engine, I'm happy to do what I did for this sub and rebuild it and repaint it. Just hit me up through the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.